Alright, so this is our second review day. It's our last review day as well. We're going to review evaluating functions. When you evaluate something in math, that means that you're plugging in a number to see what it's equal to. Right? And functions always look like this. Right? We've got f of x equals 3x minus 1. Just a reminder about functions. The letter in the front just tells you the name of it. Right? So we give it a name like a letter. Like here I have f of x and I have g of x. Right? Just be able to, so we know they're different. Right? So like down here, you know which one to use because this one has an f, this one has a g. Just the name of the function. This tells you what's plugged in. So generally when you get a function, it'll have an x in it already. Kind of like the one you get to start with. When we write it over here and we put a different thing in that parenthesis, that means we're replacing what was in the original one with what's in the new one. Right? So this is what's plugged in. This just tells you what the function is. Right? Kind of like the equation or the expression part of it. Right, so over here, we're going to look at some examples. So f of 3. So f tells me to use this one. 3 tells me that wherever there's an x, I'm going to put a 3. So here, I've got 3. This is the x. So instead of putting an x there, I'm going to put a 3 there. Right? 3 and x are multiplying. So 3 times 3 minus 4. Put that in parentheses. Right? And then all I have to do is, this is kind of like a PEMDAS. You just have to simplify that. So you can just type it in a calculator. Since it's all numbers, there's no variables left. Just type it in a calculator and get your answer. Right? Or if you want to work it out in your head, do it that way. In this case, it would be 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. So f of 3 is equal to 8. When we're evaluating functions and you're writing out the answer, always put whatever they gave you here in front of the answer. Don't just write 8 and then box that. Make sure you put f of 3 is equal to 8. Right. And number 2, now we're going to use this function here. I've got a negative 3. So everywhere there's an x, I'm going to put a negative 3 there. So 5 times negative 3 squared plus 3 times negative 3 and then minus 1. All right, so again, you can just type the whole thing in your calculator, or you can try doing it step by step. I'm going to do it real quick. 5 times 9 is 45. 45 minus 9 would be 36 and 35. Right. Almost. So g of negative 3 is 35. That's our final answer. Generally, when we plug it in, we put it in parentheses. It's especially true when there's negatives. The negatives really, really need to be in parentheses just so that the calculator knows what to do with it when you type it in, right? These second two, if you look here, these were just numbers. These ones have variables in them. So when you are evaluating a function with more variables, it's a little bit differently than this one, right? So for here, everywhere there's an x, I'm going to put a 2x instead. So in this case, 3x minus 1. So 3, this is where the x was. So instead of an x, I'm going to put 2x. Right? Now, I can't type this in a calculator because it has a variable in it. So I'm going to have to simplify it without the calculator. When I do 3 times 2x, I get 6x. 6x minus 1 is not like terms, which means this is as far as we can simplify it. And there's the final answer. Okay, so we're going to try number 4. G of x equals 3x. So now, wherever there was an x, take out the x, And in each spot, I'm going to put a 3x. Now I'm going to simplify. Here I need to square it first. 3 squared is 9. X squared is x squared. 3 times 3 is 9. Bring the x. Now I can multiply the 5 and the 9. Get 45. X squared. Can't do anything there. Can't do anything there. None of these are like terms, which means this is our final answer. The only other thing we need to go over is piecewise functions. Piecewise functions are when your function is split into pieces. This has 2 pieces, this one has 3 pieces. When you evaluate them, you're not going to plug it into all of them. You're only going to plug it into one of them. What you need to do is when it's piecewise, you get the name, you get the 2 equations. You also get this. This is the range. This is telling you which function to use for which x. So in our first example, this is f of 4. So we have to think, all right, is 4 less than -1 or greater than -1? Right? 4 is greater than -1, so we're going to use this equation for this one. Right? So we're going to do 2 times 4 for this one. So f of 4 is 8. Since 4 was greater than -1, we used the 2x. In number 2, I've got f of -6. -6 is less than -1, so this time we're going to use this equation. Notice this has a -x. So if I take out the x and put parentheses in its place, that negative will be in the front. When I put the -6 into the parentheses, we now have 2 negatives. One from here and one from here. 2 negatives are a positive, so we end up with 6 plus 1, which is 7. So f of -6 is 7. Same thing with our g function. We've got g of -6. So if we look here, is it less than -2? Is it between -2 and 5? Or is it bigger than 5? -6 is less than 2, so we're going to use the -x squared equation. So again, we're taking the x out, putting the parentheses where it was, putting in the -6. So when I have this problem, PEMDAS. So again, you can just type that in a calculator. If you're doing it by hand, we're using PEMDAS. Parentheses exponents. Exponents goes first. So negative, whatever that is. -6 squared is 36. So I end up with a -36 because there was an extra negative in the front. Nothing can happen to that, so the answer is -36. Number 4, g of 10. 10 is bigger than 5. If you look here, it just says 10. There's no x, there's no letters at all, it's just a 10. That means it's giving you the answer. G of 10 is 10. If I did g of 20, anything bigger than 5, the answer is 10. You don't have to solve anything, it just gives you the answer. So that's a nice easy one. Number 5, we've got g of 3. G of 3 would go in the middle. It's between -2 and 5. So we're going to use this equation. A reminder, these are absolute value symbols when you have those straight lines. G of 3, we're going to have the absolute value of 3 minus 4. Right? Do the middle first. Absolute value of -1. Absolute values, anything in here turns positive. And then they go away. So g of 3 is just 1. There you go. Evaluating functions.